Millionaire pretends to be regular customer, but upon receiving note from Waitress is shocked. Jonathan Miller adjusted the gold watch on his wrist and observed the coffee shop's activity through the car's tinted window. At 42, he had built a real estate empire that made him one of the wealthiest men in New York City, but nobody in that small establishment in Chinatown knew he was the new owner. The blonde waitress with a ponytail approached the table he had chosen at the back of the room, away from the other customers. She seemed nervous, her hands trembling slightly as she held the notepad. "Good morning. What would you like?" asked Emily, as stated on the name tag of her beige uniform. "An espresso and a glazed donut," replied Jonathan, pretending to browse the menu. As she wrote down the order, she discreetly dropped a folded paper next to his cup. Her blue eyes widened when she realized he had noticed the note, but it was too late to turn back. Jonathan unfolded the paper with curiosity, and his expression changed completely. The handwritten words seemed to burn in his hands. "Please, sir, you need to help me. My grandmother is very sick, and we don't have money for the medicine. She worked her whole life in this coffee house and doesn't deserve to suffer like this." "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that," murmured Emily, trying to take the paper back. Jonathan held the note firmly, studying every word of the careful handwriting. There was something about that situation that touched him unexpectedly. "Has your grandmother worked here for a long time?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "She worked for 30 years until last month. Now she's hospitalized and—" Emily swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "The medicine is very expensive, and with my salary, I can't afford it." Ms. Ruth, the cook with graying hair, appeared carrying a tray and observed the conversation out of the corner of her eye. At 68, she knew every employee and regular customer of the coffee house. "Emily, stop bothering the customers," she said, in a firm but caring voice. "Sir, I'm sorry. The girl has been very worried about her grandmother." "It's no problem," replied Jonathan. "Actually, I'd like to know more about the situation." Ms. Ruth narrowed her eyes, studying the customer's face. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't identify what. After so many years working there, she had developed a sharp instinct for people. Emily brought the coffee and the glazed donut, her hands still shaking. Jonathan noticed she was wearing a patched uniform and worn-out shoes, clear signs of financial difficulties. "Your grandmother, what's her name?" he asked, stirring the sugar in his coffee. "Martha Williams. She started working here when I was little, raised me alone after my parents." Emily hesitated, not wanting to go into painful details. The name hit Jonathan like a lightning bolt. Martha Williams was the woman who had taken care of him and his mother when he was a child, during the hard times when they lived in a tenement just a few blocks away. She did cleaning for several families in the neighborhood and always brought food when they had nothing to eat. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "What do you mean she raised you alone?" insisted Jonathan, trying to maintain his composure. Emily looked around, checking if anyone was listening, and quickly sat in the chair across from him. "My parents passed away in an accident when I was 5. Grandma Martha adopted me, even though she was alone and earning very little. She always said I was the most precious gift God had given her." The memories flooded Jonathan's mind like an avalanche. Martha always talked about a granddaughter who was her little princess, but he had never made the connection. Back then, at 16, he was too focused on getting a scholarship to escape that life of hardship. "Does she still live in the same place as always?" he asked, pretending casual interest. "No, sir. About 10 years ago, we managed to move to a small apartment in Brooklyn Heights. It's not much, but it was her dream to have a little place of our own." Jonathan remembered how Martha always talked about having her own home no matter how small. She saved every little coin she had left, storing it in a cookie tin under the bed. Gary, the middle-aged manager, approached the table with an irritated expression on his face. His thinning hair was combed over to try to disguise his growing baldness. "Emily, you should be working, not chatting with customers," he said sharply. "Sorry, Mr. Gary, I was just—" "It's all right," interrupted Jonathan. "Actually, I was asking about the coffee house's history. It's a charming place." Gary immediately changed his posture when he realized he was dealing with a well-dressed customer. Oh, of course. We take pride in our tradition. This coffee house has been around for over 40 years. Many neighborhood families grew up coming here. And the longest-serving employee? That was Emily's grandmother, Ms. Martha. Worked here for 3 decades, knew the history of every brick in this place. Too bad she got sick and had to stop. Gary spoke in a tone that tried to sound respectful, but Jonathan detected a note of irritation. What kind of illness? Heart problems. She needs expensive medication and constant medical care, Emily answered quickly before the manager could speak. Well, I'll let you get back to work, said Gary, giving Emily a warning look before walking away. When they were alone again, Jonathan pulled a golden pen from his jacket and wrote something on a napkin. I want you to take this to the hospital where your grandmother is staying, he said, sliding the paper discreetly across the table. Emily picked up the napkin and almost fainted when she saw what was written, a check for $50,000. Sir, I can't accept this. It's too much money, you don't even know me, she stammered, pushing the paper back. Your grandmother did a lot for me, even without knowing it, Jonathan replied enigmatically. Consider this a late payment. What do you mean? Do you know my grandmother? Jonathan hesitated. He wasn't ready to reveal his identity yet, but he couldn't ignore the situation either. Martha had been like a second mother to him during the toughest years of his childhood. Let's just say she helped my family when I was young. I never forgot her kindness. Emily held the check with trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. It was more money than she had ever seen in her entire life. But why would you do this? I don't understand. Some debts of gratitude can't be measured in money, said Jonathan, rising from the table. Take good care of her. He paid the bill with $100 bill, telling them to keep the change, and left the coffee house, leaving Emily in a state of shock. Outside, Jonathan watched through the window. He saw when Emily showed the check to Ms. Ruth, who almost dropped the tray she was carrying. The two women hugged, crying with emotion and relief. That night, Jonathan couldn't sleep. Childhood memories came flooding back. He remembered how Martha would come home tired from work, but always found the energy to tell stories to him and Emily when they were little. She made up fantastic tales about brave princesses and heroes who overcame all difficulties. The next day, he couldn't resist and returned to the coffee house. He chose a different table, trying to seem casual. Emily was beaming, her eyes shining in a way he hadn't seen the day before. Good morning, she said cheerfully, approaching with her order pad. How is your grandmother? Jonathan asked directly. Emily stopped writing and looked at him attentively. Much better. The doctors were surprised by her improvement after starting the new treatment. But may I ask you something? Of course. Yesterday you said my grandmother helped your family. She's very eager to meet you to thank you in person. Jonathan felt a tightness in his chest. Martha had always been like that, grateful for the smallest kindnesses, even when she was the one giving the most to others. I'm not sure if it would be appropriate. Please, insisted Emily. She won't be able to sleep properly until she meets the guardian angel who saved her life. Guardian angel. That's how Martha used to call people who did good without expecting anything in return. Jonathan remembered how she used to say that everyone had a guardian angel, disguised as an ordinary person, and that one day he would understand the meaning of that. All right. How about if I visit her this afternoon? Emily practically jumped for joy. Really? She'll be so happy. Mercy Hospital, room 314. She usually wakes up between 2 and 5 in the afternoon. The rest of the morning passed in a haze of anxiety for Jonathan. He cancelled all his meetings and spent hours thinking about what he would say to Martha. Would she recognize him after so many years? At 3 in the afternoon, he was at the door of room 314. He took a deep breath before knocking lightly. Come in, said a familiar voice, though more fragile than he remembered. Martha was sitting in bed with completely white hair, but eyes still lively and attentive. She looked at Jonathan for a few seconds, tilting her head as if trying to remember where she knew him from. Good afternoon, Miss Martha. My name is Jonathan Miller. Her eyes widened. Jonathan, little Johnny from the tenement on Orchard Street? He nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. She still recognized him. Good heavens, how you've grown. I always knew you'd go far, I always knew, she said, reaching out her hands to him. Jonathan held her hands, noticing how much more fragile they were, but they still carried the same affection as always. "You saved me when I was a boy. Now it's my turn to repay you." "You owe me nothing, my child. It was a pleasure taking care of you and your mother. You were like family to me." "And you were always like a grandmother to me," replied Jonathan, surprising himself with the honesty of his words. Martha began to cry softly. "Your mother, how is she?" Jonathan lowered his head. This was the moment he had feared most. "She passed away 10 years ago. Cancer." "Oh my God." Martha brought her hand to her chest. "Miss Olivia was such a good woman. She would be proud of the man you've become." They talked for over 2 hours. Jonathan told her about his business career, the difficulties he faced, the sacrifices he made. Martha talked about how she had taken care of Emily, the challenges of raising a child alone, the joy of seeing her granddaughter grow up and graduate. "She's studying business administration in college," said Martha proudly. "I always say she has a head for business, just like you did when you were a boy." "How so?" "Do you remember when you set up that candy stand on the corner? You were 8 years old and already knew how to calculate the profit from every piece of candy you sold." Jonathan smiled at the memory. He had started by selling candy he bought wholesale, saving every penny to help with household expenses. "Emily has that same determination. She works at the coffee house during the day and studies at night. She dreams of having her own business one day." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. This really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing, a nurse came in to check Martha's vital signs, interrupting the conversation. Jonathan took the opportunity to say goodbye, promising to return the next day. "Jonathan," Martha called out when he was at the door, "thank you for becoming the man your mother always dreamed you would be." Those words stayed with him the entire way back. His mother, Olivia, had worked double shifts for years, washing clothes by day and cleaning offices at night, all so he could attend a private school on scholarship. At the coffee house the next day, Emily greeted him with an even bigger smile. "My grandmother hasn't stopped talking about you. She said she's known you since you were little." "That's true. Your grandmother was very important in my life. She told me you used to sell sweets when you were a child. Did you already know back then that you were going to be a businessman?" Jonathan laughed. "Back then, I only knew I needed to help my mother with the bills. But your grandmother always believed I would go far." Emily served the coffee and quickly sat down across from him. "Can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Do you have a family? Are you married? Do you have children?" The question hit a sensitive spot. Jonathan had dedicated himself so much to business that he had neglected his personal life. He'd had a few relationships, but none lasted. The women complained that he was married to his work. "No, I never married. I don't have children." "Why? You seem like a good person." "I guess I never found the right person. Or maybe I focused so much on professional success that I forgot to build a family." Emily looked thoughtful. "My grandmother always says that money doesn't hug you when you go to sleep. She may not have much, but she's always had a lot of love to give." Those words touched Jonathan deeply. Despite all his wealth, he returned every night to a luxurious but empty apartment. "Your grandmother is a wise woman. She wants to invite you to dinner when she's discharged from the hospital. She said she wants to cook for you like she used to." Jonathan felt his eyes filling with tears. Martha always made a point of cooking for him on days when there was nothing at home, using the few ingredients she had to create meals that felt like feasts. It would be an honor. Ms. Ruth approached the table carrying a cup of coffee. "Excuse me, but I can't shake the feeling that I've seen you somewhere before," she said, studying Jonathan's face. "I worked in several places around the neighborhood when I was young," he replied vaguely. "No, it's something else. You remind me of someone." Ms. Ruth scratched her head, trying to make the connection. Gary appeared again, this time carrying a stack of papers. "Emily, I need to speak with you." His tone was too serious for a routine conversation. Emily stood up, following the manager to the small office at the back of the coffee house. Jonathan pretended to read the newspaper, but he was listening to the conversation. The voices grew louder, and he could hear fragments. "We can no longer..." "Spending cuts," Unfortunately, we're going to have to... Emily came out of the office with a pale face and red eyes. What happened? Jonathan asked when she returned to his table. They're going to let me go next week. They claim it's spending cuts, but I know it's because Gary doesn't like that I talk to the customers. Jonathan felt anger growing inside him. Gary was being clearly unfair to Emily, especially after everything she had been through. How many employees are they letting go? Just me, from what I understand. Mr. Gary said that one less person won't make a difference in the service. Jonathan's indignation was hard to control. As the owner of the coffee house, he had every right to reverse this decision, but he still hadn't revealed his identity. Emily, can I give you some advice? Of course. Never accept being treated as if you're disposable. You have value, you have rights. Sometimes we need to fight for what's ours. That's easy to say when you have money, she sighed. I need this job to pay for college and help with Grandma's medicine. Jonathan was reaching the limit of his patience. He decided it was time for a serious talk with Gary. Excuse me, where is the restroom? At the end of the hall, sir. Instead of going to the restroom, Jonathan went straight to the office where Gary was. He knocked on the door and entered without waiting for permission. Can I speak with you? Of course, sir. How can I help you? Gary stood up, trying to appear helpful. I heard you're going to fire Emily. Well, these are internal company matters, administrative decisions that... Cost-cutting or personal persecution? Gary's face turned red. Listen here, I don't know who you think you are to come questioning my decisions. I'm the new owner of this coffee house, said Jonathan calmly. Gary instantly turned pale. You... But I didn't know. Nobody told me. And now you know. Emily will not be fired. In fact, she'll be promoted to customer service supervisor. But sir, that's not... And you're fired for just cause. Mistreatment of employees and incompetent management. Gary stood speechless. You can't do this. I've worked here for 5 years. I can and I am. You can collect your things and leave. The termination papers will be sent by the lawyers. Jonathan left the office, leaving Gary in shock. The entire coffee house had stopped to watch the discussion. Emily approached, worried. Did something happen? Everything's settled. You won't be fired anymore. What do you mean? Jonathan took a deep breath. There was no more delaying the revelation. Because I'm the owner of this coffee house. The silence that followed was absolute. Emily, Ms. Ruth, and the other employees stared at him as if he'd grown a second head. You are our boss? Stammered Emily. I bought the establishment 3 weeks ago. I was observing how it operated before introducing myself officially. Ms. Ruth slapped her forehead. Now I remember where I've seen you before. On television, in the Business Association magazine. You're Jonathan Miller, the businessman. The pieces finally fell into place for everyone. The well-dressed man who had saved Martha wasn't just any customer. He was one of the wealthiest businessmen in New York City. Why didn't you tell us from the beginning? Asked Emily, still processing the information. I wanted to get to know you without you knowing who I am. People act differently when they know they're talking to the boss. And now what will happen to us? Asked one of the other employees. Now we're going to improve this place, raise wages, modernize equipment, expand the menu. But most importantly, we're going to treat all employees with the respect they deserve. Emily began to cry, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude. Thank you for saving my grandmother. Thank you for saving my job. Thank you for... You don't need to thank me, interrupted Jonathan. Your grandmother did much more for me than I could ever do for you. That afternoon, Jonathan met with all the employees to explain the plans for the coffee house. He announced wage increases, health insurance, profit sharing, and growth opportunities. I want this place to be more than just a simple coffee house, he said. I want it to be a place where neighborhood families feel welcome, where employees are proud to work. Ms. Ruth raised her hand. Can I make a suggestion? Of course. How about we name the coffee house after Ms. Martha? She dedicated her whole life to this place. The idea was met with enthusiasm by everyone. Jonathan was moved to see how beloved Martha was by the whole team. Martha's Coffee House. I like the idea. The next day, Jonathan went to the hospital to share the news with Martha. She was much better, already able to walk around the room, and the doctors were talking about discharging her soon. "My son, what did you do at the coffee house? Emily came here saying you're the owner and that you fired Gary. He was mistreating the employees, especially Emily." "You've always been protective of those you care about," smiled Martha. "Remember when you fought those older boys who were picking on me at the market?" Jonathan laughed at the memory. He was 12 and stood up to 3 15-year-old boys to defend Martha, even knowing he'd get the worst of it. "You always said we had to defend those who couldn't defend themselves. And you never forgot, did you?" She touched his face affectionately. "Your mother would be so proud." "Miss Martha, can I ask a personal question?" "Of course, my son." "Why did you never marry? Never had children of your own?" Martha sighed. "I had a great love when I was young, but he went off to war and never came back. After that, I never found anyone who made my heart beat the same way." "You weren't alone your whole life." "Alone? I had you, your mother, Emily. I've looked after dozens of neighborhood children over the years. Family isn't just blood, my son. It's love, it's care, it's being there." These words touched Jonathan deeply. He had spent his whole life chasing material success, but had completely neglected human relationships. "You're right. I'm the one who ended up alone, even with all the money in the world." "It's never too late to change, Jonathan. You're still young. You have so much love to give. And what if I don't know how? You learn to love by loving. Start by taking care of the people around you. Emily, the coffee house employees, the neighbors. Love multiplies when it's shared." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. When Jonathan left the hospital that day, he had a completely different perspective on his life. Martha had planted a seed in his heart. The following week, the renovations at the coffee house began. Jonathan hired the best architecture firm to modernize the space without losing its original charm. Emily was officially promoted and received a significant raise. "I'll never be able to thank you for everything you're doing," she said, organizing the new ordering system. "Stop calling me sir. We're practically the same age." "So, Jonathan?" "Much better." Their relationship deepened naturally. Jonathan discovered that Emily was smart, ambitious, and had great ideas for improving the business. She suggested partnerships with local suppliers, creating a loyalty program and themed events. "You have a head for business," said Jonathan after a particularly productive meeting. "I learned by watching my grandmother manage our lives with so little money. She always said it's not how much you have, but how you use what you have." "Would you like to take a business management course? I can pay for your studies." Emily hesitated. "I don't want you to think I'm taking advantage of the situation. Emily, you have the potential to be much more than an employee. You could be my partner if you want." "Partner? Why not? You know this business better than I do. You have the customer's trust. You understand the neighborhood. I have the capital and the expansion experience. It would be a perfect partnership." The proposal left Emily in a state of shock. She had never imagined that one day she would be a business partner, especially with someone like Jonathan. "I need to think. Of course, there's no rush, but know that I trust you." That night, Emily went to the hospital to tell Martha about the proposal. Her grandmother was overjoyed. "My granddaughter is going to be a businesswoman. I always knew you had that gift." "But Grandma, what if I can't handle it? What if I disappoint Jonathan?" "Dear, fear only serves to show us what really matters. If you're afraid, it's because this opportunity means a lot to you." "I'm afraid of ruining our friendship." Martha smiled mischievously. "Friendship? Is that all you have?" "Grandma, I'm not blind, my dear. I see how he looks at you, how you get when you talk about him. There are sparks in the air." Emily blushed. "He's very important to me, but we're from different worlds." "Nonsense. Jonathan may have a lot of money now, but his heart is still the same boy I knew. And you, my granddaughter, are worth more than any wealth in this world." The next morning, Emily arrived at the coffee house determined to accept the partnership proposal. She found Jonathan talking to a well-dressed man she didn't know. Emily, this is David Cohen, my lawyer. He will take care of all the partnership paperwork. So you decided to accept? Asked David. Yes, I accept being Jonathan's partner. The two men smiled. David explained all the terms of the partnership. Emily would have 30% of the business initially, with the possibility of increasing as the company grew. 30%? Emily almost fainted. But that's too much. It's fair, said Jonathan. You know the business, you have good ideas, and most importantly, you have the trust of the employees and customers. While David prepared the contracts, Jonathan and Emily took a walk through the neighborhood, planning the expansion of the coffee house. I've always dreamed of having my own business, confessed Emily, but I never imagined it would be like this. How did you imagine it? Small, simple, maybe a snack bar or a small restaurant. Nothing grand. There's nothing wrong with dreaming small, but there's also nothing wrong with dreaming big, said Jonathan. Your grandmother always taught me that the size of the dream should be proportional to the size of the heart. And what is the size of your heart? Jonathan stopped walking and looked at her. It's been growing every day since I started coming back to the coffee house. The moment became tense, full of unspoken meanings. Emily felt her heart race. Jonathan, I know we're from different worlds, he interrupted. I know you might think it's just gratitude for everything I did for your grandmother, but I want you to know that my feelings are genuine. What feelings? I'm in love with you, Emily. She was speechless for a few seconds. Since when? I think since the first day, when I saw your courage in asking for help to save your grandmother. You reminded me why I started working so hard to protect the people I love. Jonathan, you don't have to answer now. I just wanted you to know. Our business partnership doesn't depend on this. They're separate things. They're not separate, said Emily softly, because I feel something for you too. Jonathan felt his heart race. Really? You saved me when I needed it most. But it wasn't just that. I saw how you treat the employees, how you speak fondly of my grandmother, how you care about the details. You have a good heart. They kissed right there, in the middle of the street where Jonathan had grown up and where he was now building a new future with Emily. Ms. Ruth, who had gone out to buy ingredients, saw everything from the corner and smiled. At 68, she had witnessed many love stories, but she had rarely seen one as beautiful as that. The next day, Martha was discharged from the hospital. Jonathan made a point of picking her up personally, in a luxurious wheelchair he had ordered. My goodness, what an exaggeration, laughed Martha. I can walk. After everything you've done for me, it will never be too much, replied Jonathan, helping her settle into the leather car seat. When they arrived at the coffee house, which now displayed a new sign reading, Martha's Coffee House, she began to cry. Did you do this for me? It was Ms. Ruth's idea, said Emily, hugging her grandmother. But I fully supported it, added Jonathan. The coffee house's reopening party was an emotional event. The whole neighborhood showed up, old and new customers, suppliers, employees, and their families. Martha was the star of the evening, receiving tributes from everyone. I'd like to make a toast, said Jonathan, raising his glass, to the woman who taught me that true wealth lies in the love we give and receive. To Miss Martha, who took care of me when I was a boy and is now seeing her granddaughter follow her own dreams. Everyone applauded emotionally. Martha stood up, leaning on Emily and Jonathan. My children, you've given me the most precious gift there is, the chance to see love grow where it was planted so many years ago. Jonathan, you've always been my special boy. Emily, you've always been my princess. Now you've found in each other the family I always prayed you'd have. The months that followed were filled with hard work and growth. The coffee house became one of the most popular spots in the neighborhood. Emily showed an incredible intuition for business, suggesting improvements that significantly increased profits. We should open a second location, she suggested during a meeting. Where are you thinking? In Brooklyn Heights, near where I live with Grandma. It's a neighborhood with potential, lots of young people, activity all day long. Jonathan admired her strategic vision. In just a few months, Emily had transformed from an insecure employee into a confident businesswoman. I like the idea. How about we visit some spots tomorrow? The second coffee house was a success from day one. Emily took over the management of both locations, freeing Jonathan to focus on new real estate projects that were constantly emerging. "You're becoming a real businesswoman," he joked during a romantic dinner they had started having every Friday. "I have a good teacher," she replied, taking his hand on the table. Their relationship blossomed naturally. Jonathan discovered that Emily complemented him perfectly. Where he was impulsive, she was thoughtful. Where he thought too big, she kept him grounded. Where he got lost in numbers, she remembered the people. "I've been thinking about something," said Jonathan during one of these dinners. "What? How about we expand to other neighborhoods in the city?" "Slow down, businessman," laughed Emily. "We're still learning how to manage 2 locations." "But don't you think we have potential for more?" "I'm sure we do, but I want our growth to be sustainable. There's no point in opening 10 coffee houses if we can't maintain the quality." Emily's wisdom constantly impressed Jonathan. She had inherited from Martha the ability to see what really mattered. One evening, after closing the Chinatown coffee house, they went to visit Martha. The 70-year-old lady was in much better health and had become the unofficial consultant for the business. "How were sales today?" she asked, serving coffee for both. "Record-breaking again," replied Emily. "Jonathan wants to open more locations." "And you don't want to?" "I do, but carefully. We don't want to grow too fast and lose our essence." Martha nodded in approval. "My granddaughter is right. Business is like a relationship. It grows better when it has time to put down roots." Jonathan looked at the 2 women who had become the center of his life. Martha, with her wisdom from having lived a long life and loved unconditionally. Emily, with her perfect blend of ambition and sensitivity. "You 2 are the smartest women I know," he said. "Flatterer," laughed Martha. "But keep talking. I'm enjoying it." The conversation went on late into the night, planning not just the business but the future they wanted to build together. Jonathan realized that for the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking only of himself. He had a family to care for, shared dreams to fulfill. "Martha, can I ask you something?" said Jonathan when Emily went to the kitchen to get more coffee. "Of course, my son. What do you think of my feelings for Emily?" Martha smiled. "I think it's the most natural thing in the world. You 2 complete each other. But don't you think I'm too old for her? Or too rich?" "Jonathan, true love doesn't care about age or money. You love her essence, don't you?" "I love everything about her. The determination, the kindness, the intelligence, the way she treats people. And she loves the man you are, not what you have. That's what matters. I'm thinking of asking her to marry me." Martha clapped her hands, emotional. "Really? Really? But I want to do it the right way. I want to ask for your blessing first." "You have all my blessing, my son. I don't know a better man for my granddaughter." Emily came back from the kitchen and was puzzled to see the 2 of them whispering. "Are you 2 conspiring about something?" "Just talking about life," Martha replied innocently. That same week, Jonathan began to plan the proposal. He wanted it to be special, but without excessive showiness. Knowing Emily, he knew she would prefer something intimate and meaningful. He decided to propose at the coffee house itself, the place where it all began. He called Miss Ruth and the other employees to help with the surprise. "Do you think she'll say yes?" he asked, as nervous as a teenager. "Jonathan, she's in love with you," replied Miss Ruth. "Anyone with eyes can see that. But marriage is a big step. What if she thinks it's too soon? Stop worrying. Emily isn't the type to play games. If she didn't want to marry you, she would have made it clear already." On Saturday night, after they closed the coffee house, Jonathan said he had a surprise for Emily. "What kind of surprise?" she asked, curious. "You'll see." He led her inside the coffee house, which was decorated with candles and flowers. In the center of the room, there was a table set for 2. "Jonathan, how beautiful. But what's the occasion?" "Sit here," he said, pulling the chair out for her. Emily obeyed, still not fully understanding what was happening. Jonathan poured champagne and sat down across from her. "Emily, 6 months ago you dropped a note on my table asking for help for your grandmother, and you completely changed our lives. Actually, you 2 changed my life. Martha taught me what unconditional love was when I was a child. You taught me what romantic love was when I had already given up on finding it." Emily began to understand where the conversation was going and felt her heart race. "Jonathan, let me finish." He stood up and took a small box from his pocket. "Emily, will you marry me?" She was speechless for a few seconds, looking at the simple but elegant ring he held. "Is this for real? I've never been more serious in my life." Emily began to cry, but they were tears of happiness. "Yes, of course, yes." Jonathan placed the ring on her finger and kissed her passionately. It was then they realized they weren't alone. Martha, Ms. Ruth, and the other employees were hidden behind the counter, crying with emotion. "Were you spying on us?" Emily laughed. "We couldn't miss this moment," admitted Martha, approaching to hug them both. The news of the engagement spread quickly through the neighborhood. The customers at the coffee house were thrilled to hear that the perfect couple had made it official. "When will the wedding be?" asked Ms. Ruth. "We haven't decided yet," replied Emily, "but we want something simple, with the people who truly matter." "No huge party at a five-star hotel," joked Jonathan. "I'd rather have the celebration right here at the coffee house. This is where we met. This is where our love grew." The idea of getting married at the coffee house itself delighted everyone. They began planning a simple but moving ceremony, with the participation of the entire community that had become their extended family. As the wedding preparations moved forward, the business also thrived. They opened the third coffee house, this time in the city center, always maintaining the same values of quality and respectful treatment of employees. "We're managing to balance professional and personal growth," observed Emily during a planning meeting. "I learned that from you," replied Jonathan. "Before, I only thought about expanding. Now I think about the quality of life for everyone involved, including our own, especially our own." The wedding was scheduled for a Saturday in May, when the autumn air turned cooler and more pleasant. The coffee house was decorated with simple yet elegant flowers, creating a warm and romantic atmosphere. Martha, at 70 years old, was radiant as Emily's matron of honor. She wore a navy blue dress that Jonathan had insisted on buying, and an antique brooch that had belonged to her mother. "You look beautiful, Grandma," said Emily, adjusting the simple veil. "Not as beautiful as you, my princess." Emily wore a simple yet elegant wedding dress without extravagance, but with a cut that highlighted her natural beauty. Jonathan had insisted on buying the most expensive dress in the city, but she chose something that reflected her personality. The ceremony was conducted by a young priest who frequented the coffee house and had followed the couple's entire story. Their vows were simple but deeply moving. "Emily," said Jonathan, holding her hands, "you taught me that true success isn't measured in money but in shared love. I promise to care for you as you cared for your grandmother, with dedication, patience, and endless affection." "Jonathan," replied Emily, her voice choked with emotion, "you showed me that dreams can come true when we find the right person to dream with. I promise to be your partner in life as I am in business, with honesty, loyalty, and lots of love." When the priest declared them husband and wife, the entire coffee house erupted in applause. Customers, employees, neighbors, everyone celebrated this union that had begun with a simple note and blossomed into a beautiful love story. The celebration continued late into the night, with live music from a neighborhood guitarist, food prepared by the coffee house employees themselves, and lots of genuine joy. "I never imagined I could be this happy," said Emily to Jonathan during their first dance. "Me neither. For a long time I thought happiness meant having a lot of money in the bank. And now I know it's having you by my side, and Martha blessing us." Martha, seated in a chair decorated especially for her, watched everything with eyes shining with joy. At 70 years old, she was witnessing the fulfillment of a dream she never knew she had, to see the boy she helped raise build a family with her beloved granddaughter. "Miss Martha, are you all right?" asked Ms. Ruth, noticing she was emotional. "I'm more than all right, my friend. I am complete. God allowed me to see the happy ending of this story that began so many years ago." "What story?" "The one about the poor boy who sold sweets on the corner and dreamed of having a better life. The one about the orphan girl I raised with all the love I had. Today they've become a couple who will build a beautiful family. The honeymoon was simple, a week at an inn in Aspen without excessive luxury, but with lots of romance and intimacy. Jonathan had learned that the best moments didn't need to cost a fortune. "What are you thinking about?" asked Emily, lying beside him on the inn's porch watching the stars. "I'm thinking about how my life completely changed in just a few months. For the better. Infinitely for the better. Before I had money, but I had no purpose. Now I have you, our family, our businesses that make a difference in people's lives. And our children when they come." Jonathan smiled. "You want children? I want to build a family with you, as big as God allows." "Then let's start practicing," he joked, kissing her tenderly. When they returned from their honeymoon, they found the coffee houses running perfectly under the supervision of Ms. Ruth and the team. Martha had officially taken on the role of consultant, giving input on the menu and chatting with customers who were her longtime acquaintances. "How were the sales?" asked Emily. "Record-breaking every day," Ms. Ruth replied proudly. "The neighborhood folks couldn't stop talking about your wedding. It even became a tourist attraction." Indeed, the story of the millionaire who disguised himself as a regular customer and fell in love with the waitress had spread through the city. Several magazines wanted to interview the couple, but they preferred to keep things discreet. "Our story isn't for the media," said Jonathan. "It's ours, our families, our employees, our communities." "I agree," supported Emily. "We don't want to become a spectacle." 6 months had passed since the wedding when Emily discovered she was pregnant. The news was celebrated by the entire extended family. "A baby!" shouted Martha, hugging her granddaughter. "I'm going to be a great-grandmother." "And I'm going to be a father," said Jonathan, still processing the information. "Wow, I'm going to be a real father." "Are you scared?" asked Emily. "Terrified, but also excited. I want to be a present father, unlike mine." Jonathan had grown up without his father, who abandoned them when he was little. He promised himself he would be the father he never had. The pregnancy went smoothly. Emily continued working until the 8th month, supervising the coffee houses with the help of an increasingly skilled team. "You need to rest more," said Martha, worried about her granddaughter's work pace. "I'm fine, Grandma, and work distracts me from the anxiety." Anxiety. "What if I'm not a good mother? What if I don't know how to take care of the baby?" Martha laughed. "My dear, you were raised by me. You learned to care for others by watching how I cared for you. Maternal instinct is stronger than any fear." The baby was born on a December dawn after a peaceful delivery. It was a girl, healthy and perfect, who was named Olivia, in honor of Jonathan's mother. "She's beautiful," sighed Martha, holding her great-granddaughter in her arms. "Just like Emily when she was born." Jonathan couldn't stop looking at his daughter. His entire perspective on life changed again in that moment. "Hi, Olivia. I'm your daddy. I promise you'll never go through the hardships I went through, but I also promise you'll know the value of things and the importance of helping others." Little Olivia brought even more unity to the family. Martha moved to an apartment in the same building as Jonathan and Emily to help with her granddaughter and be closer to everyone. "Now our family is truly complete," said Emily, breastfeeding her daughter while Jonathan and Martha made plans for the future. "Complete?" joked Jonathan. "What if Olivia wants little brothers and sisters?" "Easy there, businessman. One thing at a time." The coffee houses continued growing and thriving. They opened 2 more locations, always maintaining the same standards of quality and care for their employees. Many of the original employees became managers of the new units, creating growth opportunities for the entire team. "We're employing over 50 people now," Emily observed during a board meeting. "And they all have health insurance, profit sharing, meal vouchers, and growth opportunities," Jonathan added proudly. "Your mother would be proud," said Martha, who now officially participated in meetings as a consultant. "Both mothers would be proud," corrected Jonathan, looking at Emily and Martha. When Olivia turned 1, they organized a party at the first coffee house, the one in Chinatown, which had become the symbol of their life transformation. "This is where it all began," said Jonathan, holding his daughter in his arms as she tried to grab the colorful balloons. With a desperate note from a waitress who didn't know what else to do, Emily recalled. The best note I ever received in my life. Martha, at 71 years old, was radiant seeing her family grow and thrive. Her health had completely stabilized, and she enjoyed being the most doting great-grandmother in the neighborhood. "You know what makes me happiest about this whole story?" she said to the couple. "What, Grandma?" "You never forgot where you came from. You're still the same good people you always were." "How could we forget?" replied Jonathan. "Our origin is what brought us here. And it's our origin that reminds us what truly matters," Emily added. That night, after all the guests had left and little Olivia was asleep, Jonathan and Emily sat at the table where it all began. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I'm thinking about how life can completely change with one simple act of courage. Do you regret letting that note fall?" "Never. It was the best decision of my life." "And you? Do you regret buying this coffee house?" "Never. It was the best investment of my life. Not in money, but in love and happiness." "If we could go back in time, would you do everything the same?" Jonathan thought for a few seconds. "I'd do everything exactly the same. Every decision, every moment, every word. Because it all brought us here, to this perfect moment." "Perfect moment?" "You, me, Olivia sleeping in the next room, Martha safe in her home, our happy employees, our growing family. Yes, this is a perfect moment." Emily stood up and walked to the wall where a framed photo hung, their first official picture as a couple taken on their engagement day. "You know what strikes me most about this photo?" "What?" "Our smiles. They're the smiles of people who finally found their place in the world. And we did, didn't we? We found it in each other." Jonathan joined her, embracing her from behind. "Emily Miller," he said, still getting used to her last name. "I like how that sounds." "Me too. It means you're mine forever. And you're mine forever." They stood there for a few more minutes, holding each other in silence, contemplating the journey that had brought them there. A journey that began with need, moved through gratitude, and arrived at true love. Outside, the nighttime bustle of New York City continued its fast pace. But inside the small coffee house in Chinatown, time seemed to have stopped to celebrate a love story that had transformed not just two lives, but an entire community. The note that Emily dropped on that table wasn't just asking for financial help. Without knowing it, she was asking for a new chance for her entire family. And Jonathan, without knowing it, wasn't just buying a coffee house. He was buying the opportunity to rediscover himself as a human being. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. Do you believe that destiny sometimes puts the right people in our path? Share your honest thoughts in the comments with sincere words. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.